Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that, like Kylo Ren, has to wear a mask because it's so ugly. Ladies and gentlemen, every so often, once in a blue moon, comes along a game or an expansion that makes us forget all of our differences and join hands in this moment that becomes part of our shared heritage. I am, of course, talking about the expansion that finally brings Howard the Duck to Legendary. I am, of course, talking about Legendary Secret Wars, Volume 2 from Upper Deck.
My head blows on up like a big hot air balloon. Higher and higher, the hotter the fire, just me in this empty room. People seem to hold their breath as I walk on inside. Screws almost ate me 'cause I'm going crazy, but everyone steps aside. And it's so cool to be alone, and I feel that I have found a home inside.
Legendary Secret Wars Volume 2 from Upper Deck, of course, is part of the Legendary system, the Legendary game mechanic. This is another expansion that introduces a lot of new, weird, and funky things. Now, I have to say, again, I'm not up on the comics. I really don't know the storylines going on here, so some of these things were pretty weird when I saw them. But ultimately, I think they're pretty interesting, and it allows for some really fun and engaging gameplay. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these new weird, wacky things I'm talking about. This expansion brings some weird kind of mashups. For instance, there's a Phoenix and Cyclops kind of mashup here. There's a Doctor Strange and a Punisher kind of mashup. You see some other funky things. Captain America has a dinosaur in one of these cards. You see, you've got Jean Grey is traveling through time here, which is pretty interesting. And I have to say, probably my favorite superhero here, of course, is Captain Britain. Captain Britain. I guess he's a British superhero. He dresses in the Union Jack. I've never heard of him before. I always thought that the British already had a superhero. He was called Winston Churchill. But anyway, this Captain Britain has some fun and interesting powers, along with a lot of these other fellows. Now, there's a lot of different cards here, a lot of different abilities. For instance, Captain Britain, one of his cards is, for every different team icon you play, you get one recruitment point, or one attack point. You have the same new team affiliations from the first Secret Wars, the Illuminati and the Cabal, and there's a lot of other things here that are kind of similar. But let me talk about some of the mechanical differences here as well. You have some cards that say Spectrum, and Spectrum, of course, is if you have three different kind of hero icons there, you know, the strength, the instinct, the ranged weapons, the tech. If you have three different ones of those, you may trigger an ability on one of the cards. You may draw an extra card or get some other kind of benefit. There's another mechanic here called Patrol. Patrol may say, patrol the rooftops. And if you patrol the rooftops, essentially what that means is if the rooftops are empty, you may gain a certain advantage. You know, you may gain another card or more strength, more recruitment points, etc. But it may not just be spots in the city. You may kind of patrol some of the depleted decks or some other funky things. There's also a new rule called the Circle of Kung Fu, or Quack Fu in the case of Howard the Duck. Distasteful pun. And what that means is, if it says Circle of Kung Fu plus 5, then you would add that 5 to whatever the base level to defeat that card would be. Now, if you, on your turn, show one of your cards that has a cost of, say, 5, or whatever that number may be, then you don't worry about the Kung Fu, you just hit them at whatever their base cost is. Secret Wars Volume 1 had something called Resurrection that had kind of its own rules. Here's something a little different called Fateful Resurrection. How Fateful Resurrection works is essentially if a villain says Fateful Resurrection and you knock him out somewhere in the city, you take him out, then you draw the first card of the villain's deck. If it's a Master Strike or a plot twist, then that villain re-enters the city. You don't capture him. He just comes right back. Can be very annoying. Now, one of the scariest new mechanics in this set is Charge. And what's scary about it is when you draw one of those villain cards, if it says Charge on it, it's actually going to move more than just one space and slide. It may move 2 or 3 spaces or whatever, depending on what it says to charge with. So you draw the Charge card. Don't spend any money. You draw the charge card, and you move it along, and it's going to push all those things off. And there's like one of the schemes in this game. Essentially, you know, you lose it if too many guys escape. Well, these charges make that very difficult because you're going to get a lot of guys escaping if you pull a lot of these charge cards. It just pushes and pushes and pushes all of those guys out the window. Now, this game, of course, has a ton of things we've seen before. There's wall crawl in here, which comes from the Paint the Town Red, where you draw a card, you buy a card, rather, you put it immediately on the top of your deck. There is, of course, the cross-dimensional Rampage, which, you know, targets one kind of hero, and if you don't reveal a hero just like that, you know, you get in a lot of trouble. You can have multiple masterminds. Some of the cards come out, they can become masterminds, or some of the plot twists can make them masterminds. So all sorts of things can make more than one mastermind, which is pretty scary. Of course, one player can play as the mastermind using the ambition cards as kind of weapons, and that's all brings a whole new dimension to this game. It makes it an all-on-one instead of a purely cooperative game. Some of the villains you're fighting, they can actually go into your hand instead of into a trophy pile, and they, of course, have their own abilities that come with them. This game also brings in 3 new bystanders, which add a lot to the game as well. And then, of course, as I say, you have some various schemes. Some of them are really difficult, some of them not so much, but they're all a lot of fun, all the ones that I played. And there's a lot of great cards in this set. For instance, there's Elsa Bloodstone is one of the heroes, and one of my favorite cards from her is the, cost 8 one, the Prodigy of Ulysses Bloodstone, and it is really cool because it gives you a 6 attack, but it's also got a spectrum ability on it, which means that if you've got 3 of those different classes, it gets an additional 3. That means that card is worth 9 attack if you can make the cards work for you. So essentially, one of my favorite cards, too, is the Captain America and the Devil DINO-ROAR of Triumph card. Now, this one, it's its level 8 card as well. What this card does is whenever you defeat a villain that turn, each adjacent villain and the mastermind each get like a -2 to their score, so it makes it easier to defeat other villains as well. I really like the Acheron the Magnificent cost 7 card, the Lord of Dragons. Now, that one is very cool as well. It's a patrol the rooftops. If the rooftops are empty, you get +4 recruit and +4 attack. If it's not, you can defeat the villain on the rooftops for free. It's a really cool card. Now, the Beast's level 8 card, Multivariance Maculus, I think it's called. I don't recall. It's got something pretty wild, but you got to make the cards work for you to do it. If you have 2 tech and 2 strength icons, you can draw 3 cards. That could be very powerful, but again, you need the cards to work for you. Black Swan's Dark Foretelling card is also pretty cool. It's a cost 6. It's got like a 4 power to it. But it's one of those things where you draw the top 3 cards of the villain deck. You get any bystanders that come out of it. Then you can put, of course, those cards back in any order. That can be a very powerful card as well. I could seriously make a video just talking about all the cool cards in this set. I just don't have the time, but really there are a lot of really fun and interesting cards to play with, a lot of fun and interesting cards to play against. I really like this expansion, in case you can't tell where I'm going with it. I love Legendary. It's a brilliant game. Legendary is one of the best games, tabletop games, on the market. And that's saying something because there are so many out there, but this is truly one of the best. Legendary came in my top 20s. It was in the teens somewhere. It's just an extraordinary game, an extraordinarily fun game, and what I think is probably the best thing about it is how they keep finding ways to make it grow and innovate it. Now, they're coming out with, of course, the new versions. There's the Alien and the Predator. I think they're going to come out with Firefly and Big Trouble in Little China before long. But the way they're still growing the Marvel game is amazing. It's great. I love playing with the superheroes, and this game gives you more of the same. Again, I don't know all the storylines of the comics that well. I don't feel like I need to. It's just a fun game with fun and great and interesting mechanics. Now, the big question is, say your name isn't Rockefeller, and you can only afford to buy Secret Wars Volume 1 or Secret Wars Volume 2. Which one do you get? Well, first of all, it's a good thing you're buying one of these because you're going to need it. I like them both a lot, but gun to my head, if you want me to recommend just one of these to buy, I'd say Volume 1 I probably like a hair better. I think it introduces some of those better ideas, or I should say not better ideas, but it introduces some of those new ideas that we see again in Volume 2, but I don't know, it just seemed fresh in the first one, maybe so that's coloring my opinion here. But I liked the dynamics of 1. I liked the characters and how some of the good guys were bad. Like, for instance, Thanos was a good guy, and I loved his abilities in that one. So I like Volume 1 probably a hair better, but I like them both. And ultimately, sooner or later, if you like Legendary, you got to get both of these things, because they are both amazing games. So, no-brainer, the Discriminating Gamer says, Legendary, Secret Wars Volume 2, buy it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer. And I've got to tell you, I would really like to be Captain Britain. Hello, Governor. I'm going to save you all from certain doom from the villain. But first I have to eat my steak and kidney pie, I do. Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm